r/pettyrevenge stepsister gave away my dog, so I destroyed her life. I knew something was wrong the second I walked through the front door. The house felt different, too quiet, missing that familiar sound of paws scrambling across hardwood floors to greet me. "Buddy?" I called out, dropping my overnight bag by the stairs. "Buddy, I'm home." Nothing. My heart started racing as I walked through the living room, checking all his usual spots. Not curled up on his favorite corner of the couch. Not sprawled across the kitchen tiles where the afternoon sun hit just right. I ran upstairs, taking them two at a time, hoping maybe he was napping on my bed like he sometimes did when I was gone. Empty. "Dad!" I shouted, my voice cracking slightly. "Where's Buddy?" Heavy footsteps echoed from the master bedroom. Dad appeared at the top of the stairs, his face grave in a way that made my stomach drop to my shoes. Behind him, my stepmother Linda emerged, wringing her hands and avoiding my eyes completely. "Kiddo, we need to talk," Dad said softly. "Where is he?" The words came out sharper than I intended, but panic was flooding my system now. Buddy had never, not once in the 2 years since I'd adopted him, failed to greet me at the door. That dog was practically glued to my hip. "He got out somehow yesterday evening," Linda said quickly, her words tumbling over each other. "We looked everywhere, posted on Facebook, called all the shelters. I'm so sorry, honey. We think he might have squeezed through that loose board in the back fence." My world tilted sideways. "What loose board?" "That fence is solid, I just checked it last week when Madison found the gap when she got home from her friend's place," Dad interrupted, mentioning my 19-year-old stepsister. "She's been torn up about it. Spent hours driving around looking for him." I stared at them both, trying to process this information. Something felt off, like puzzle pieces that had been jammed together wrong. Buddy wasn't an escape artist, he was a rescue who'd been abandoned before, and if anything, he was clingy to the point of separation anxiety. The idea of him running away voluntarily made about as much sense as fish climbing trees. "Where's Madison now?" I asked. "She went back out to look again," Linda said. "She feels terrible. You know how much she loves that dog." That was the first outright lie, and hearing it made something cold settle in my chest. Madison tolerated Buddy at best, constantly complaining about his hair on the furniture and the way he'd follow me around. Just last week she'd made some comment about how high-maintenance rescue dogs were, and how some people weren't cut out to handle the responsibility. I pushed past them and ran downstairs, heading straight for the back door. The fence looked exactly the same as always, solid, secure, no gaps big enough for a butterfly to squeeze through, let alone a 60-pound golden retriever mix. I checked every single board twice, running my hands along the wood, looking for loose nails or warped sections. Nothing. Standing there in the backyard where Buddy and I played fetch every morning before school, the truth started crystallizing in my mind like ice forming on a window. Dogs don't just vanish. Fences don't magically develop gaps that disappear again. And Madison definitely didn't spend hours driving around looking for an animal she'd been complaining about for months. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "How's Buddy? Give him extra treats from me." I stared at the message until the words blurred together, rage and grief warring in my chest. Whatever had really happened to my dog, I was going to find out. And then someone was going to pay. I spent the next 3 hours calling every animal shelter, veterinary clinic, and rescue organization within a 50-mile radius. My fingers cramped from gripping the phone so tight, and my voice grew hoarse from repeating the same description over and over. Golden retriever mix, about 60 pounds, tan coat with white chest marking, answers to Buddy, microchipped under my name. Nothing. No one had seen him. By the time Madison finally came home around dinner, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook full of dead ends and a growing certainty that this whole escape story was complete bullshit. She walked in through the front door with perfectly styled hair and not a single sign that she'd been driving around searching for a missing dog for hours. "Any luck?" Dad asked hopefully as she joined us in the kitchen. Madison's face crumpled into what I was starting to recognize as a performance. "I've looked everywhere. Posted his picture in all the local Facebook groups, drove through every neighborhood between here and downtown. I even checked the park where you take him sometimes." She glanced at me with what was supposed to be sympathy. "I'm so sorry. I keep thinking if I just noticed the fence gap sooner." "Funny thing about that gap," I said, my voice deliberately casual. "I went out there to fix it, but I couldn't find it anywhere." A flicker of something, annoyance, panic, crossed her face before she rearranged it back into concerned sadness. "Oh, Dad already fixed it this morning. Didn't want any other animals getting out." I looked at Dad, who was nodding along. "Yeah, first thing I did. Nailed some extra boards over the weak spot." The lie was so smooth, so coordinated, that for a second I almost doubted myself. Almost. But I'd spent 2 years watching Madison manipulate situations to her advantage, and I knew her tells. The way she touched her collarbone when she was lying. How she over-explained details that should have been simple. The slightly too bright tone she used when she was performing concern. "Can you show me which boards you reinforced?" I asked Dad. "I want to make sure it's really secure before we bring another dog home." "Another dog?" Madison's voice pitched higher. "Don't you think you should wait a while? Give Buddy a chance to find his way back?" There it was. The real Madison, the one who didn't want me to replace what she'd taken. I filed that reaction away with all the other inconsistencies building up in my mental evidence pile. After dinner, I retreated to my room and opened my laptop. If Madison had really been posting in Facebook groups about Buddy, there should be digital proof. I scrolled through every local pet group, lost and found page, and community board I could find. Nothing. Not a single post from Madison about a missing golden retriever. But I did find something else interesting. Posted at 3:47 p.m. today, right around the time Madison claimed to be out searching, was a photo on her Instagram story. Her perfectly manicured nails wrapped around a Starbucks cup, with the caption, "Retail therapy with baked 2 hearts," and a geotag at the mall across town. I screenshotted it before it could disappear. My phone rang, making me jump. Mom's contact photo filled the screen. "Hey sweetheart, I've been thinking about Buddy all day. Any news?" I stared at that Instagram screenshot, my sister's lies multiplying in my head like cancer cells. Mom, I said quietly, I think I need your help with something. And I think I'm going to need to stay with you for a while after we figure this out. Because if Madison thought she could just erase the most important thing in my life and get away with it, she was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. The next morning, I called in sick to school and drove to every shelter within a 2-hour radius. Mom had agreed to help, but she lived 3 hours away and couldn't get here until evening. This couldn't wait. The fourth shelter I visited was a small county facility about 40 minutes from home. The volunteer at the front desk was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who barely glanced up when I walked in. I'm looking for my dog, I said, sliding a printed photo of Buddy across the counter. Golden Retriever mix, brought in sometime yesterday. She studied the picture, then looked at me with something like pity. Honey, what's your name? Why? Because if this is your dog, we need to have a conversation. My heart hammered against my ribs. It's my dog. His name is Buddy, he's microchipped under my name. What's your name? She repeated. Alex Morrison. She nodded grimly and disappeared into the back office. When she returned, she had a file folder and a grim expression. Your dog was surrendered yesterday at approximately 2 p.m. by someone claiming to be his owner. Signed all the paperwork, said she was moving and couldn't keep him. The world went white-hot around the edges. She. Young woman, maybe college age. Had all his vaccination records, knew his habits, said she'd rescued him 2 years ago. The volunteer opened the file. Madison Morrison. Said she was his owner and needed to surrender him immediately. I stared at the signature on the surrender form, my stepsister's loopy handwriting making my vision blur with rage. She hadn't just gotten rid of Buddy, she'd stolen my identity to do it, forging documents and claiming ownership of my dog. This is identity theft, I said, my voice barely steady. She's not his owner. I am. The microchip. I know, honey. We scanned him when he came in. Chips registered to you, clear as day. The volunteer's expression softened. But here's the problem. She had his vet records, knew all his information, claimed there was a mix-up with the microchip registration. Said you were her younger sibling who'd been helping care for the dog but she was the legal owner. That's insane. You can't just. She was very convincing. And unfortunately, we see family disputes over pet ownership more often than you'd think. The woman leaned forward. The good news is he's still here. The bad news is we can't release him without either her written consent or a court order proving ownership. I felt like I was drowning. How long do I have? Standard hold period is 5 days for owner surrenders. After that. She didn't need to finish. I drove home in a daze, Madison's betrayal hitting me in waves. She hadn't just lied about Buddy running away, she'd committed fraud, stolen my identity, and was apparently willing to let my dog be euthanized rather than admit what she'd done. When I walked into the house, she was sprawled on the couch watching Netflix, looking completely relaxed for someone who'd supposedly been torn up about losing the family dog. Any news? She asked without looking away from her show. I stared at her, this person I'd lived with for 3 years, wondering how I'd never seen the depth of her cruelty before. Not yet. Still looking. Maybe you should put up some flyers around town. Sometimes people find dogs and don't think to call shelters. The casual way she suggested more busy work, more pointless searching, when she knew exactly where he was, it took everything I had not to scream. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording. That's a great idea. What shelters did you call yesterday? I want to follow up with them. For just a second, her eyes flickered with panic before she recovered. Oh, you know, all the obvious ones. I don't remember the specific names. Perfect. Now I had her on video claiming she'd called shelters that would have no record of her, while I had documentation proving she'd actually been at the county facility surrendering my dog under false pretenses. Madison had just handed me the first piece of evidence I needed to destroy her. That evening, Mom arrived with the determination of a woman on a mission and a folder full of legal documents. She'd spent the drive up making phone calls to every lawyer friend she had, and the grim set of her jaw told me this was about to get serious. Show me everything, she said, settling at the kitchen table while Dad and Linda watched nervously from the doorway. I spread out my evidence like a detective laying out a case, the screenshots of Madison's Instagram showing her at the mall during her supposed search, the shelter paperwork with her forged signature, the video of her lying about calling shelters, and a detailed timeline of every inconsistency in her story. Mom studied each piece carefully, her expression growing darker by the minute. This is identity theft and fraud. She could face criminal charges. She looked up at Dad. You need to see this. But before I could call him over, Madison appeared in the kitchen doorway, having apparently overheard enough to realize her carefully constructed lie was crumbling. What's going on? She asked, but her voice had lost its usual confident tone. We found Buddy, I said simply, watching her face. The color drained from her cheeks so fast I thought she might faint. That's great. Where was he? County shelter. Someone surrendered him yesterday using my name. I held up the paperwork. Funny thing is, they have security cameras. Madison's hand flew to her collarbone, her tell. I don't understand what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Mom's voice cut through the kitchen like ice. You committed fraud, Madison. You stole my daughter's identity to surrender her dog illegally. That's ridiculous. I would never. The shelter has you on camera, I interrupted. They pulled the footage when I explained the situation. Want to keep lying, or should we just call Dad and Linda in here now? Madison's composure finally cracked completely. Her face twisted with an ugly expression I'd never seen before, all pretense of the sweet, concerned stepsister evaporating like smoke. You want to know the truth? She hissed. Fine. That stupid dog was ruining everything. Hair all over my clothes, barking when I'm trying to study, following you around like some pathetic security blanket. You're almost 18, grow up and stop hiding behind an animal. Madison. Linda's shocked voice came from the doorway. She and Dad had heard everything. I was doing everyone a favor, Madison continued, apparently too angry now to care about the audience. This family coddles you enough without adding a needy rescue mutt to the mix. You spend more time with that dog than trying to fit in here. The kitchen fell dead silent. Dad stared at his stepdaughter like he was seeing her for the first time, and Linda looked like she wanted to disappear through the floor. So you decided to just get rid of him? Dad's voice was dangerously quiet. And then lie to our faces about it? I was going to tell you eventually. I just needed time to. To what? Mom snapped. Let him be euthanized. Hope we'd all just forget about him and move on. Madison's face went through several expressions before settling on defiant desperation. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. College, maintaining my scholarship, trying to keep everyone happy. I made a mistake, okay? But it's not like Alex can't get another dog. The casual way she dismissed Buddy as replaceable, like he was a broken toy instead of my best friend and emotional support, sent white-hot rage through my system. We're getting him back, I said quietly. Tomorrow morning. And then we're having a very long conversation about your future in this house, Dad added, his disappointment palpable. Madison looked around the room at our faces and apparently realized her bridges weren't just burned, they were obliterated. Fine, she spat. But don't expect me to pretend to be happy about it. She stormed upstairs, leaving the rest of us in stunned silence. That's when I realized this was just the beginning. The next morning, Mom and I arrived at the county shelter with every piece of documentation proving Buddy was mine, vet records in my name, microchip registration, adoption papers, even photos dating back 2 years. The volunteer from yesterday looked relieved to see us. We pulled the security footage like you requested, she said, sliding a USB drive across the counter. Your stepsister was very convincing when she came in. Had answers for everything. Watching the footage later would be gut-wrenching, seeing Madison confidently lying to the staff, watching Buddy's confused face as she handed over his leash to strangers. But right now, all that mattered was the sound of familiar paws scrambling across the shelter's linoleum floor. Buddy. He nearly knocked me over, whimpering and pressing against my legs like he was afraid I might disappear again. I buried my face in his fur, breathing in that familiar smell of dog shampoo and sunshine, feeling whole for the first time in 48 hours. But as we drove home, I realized something had fundamentally changed. This wasn't just about getting my dog back anymore. Madison had shown her true nature, and now I could see 3 years of subtle manipulation with perfect clarity, the way she'd accidentally damaged my things, how she monopolized Dad and Linda's attention during my visits, the comments designed to make me feel like an outsider in what was supposed to be my home too. She'd been systematically trying to push me out of the family, and Buddy had just been the most devastating attack in a long war I hadn't even realized we were fighting. When we pulled into the driveway, I could see Madison watching from her bedroom window. She disappeared quickly when she spotted Buddy in the back seat. Dad and Linda were waiting in the living room, and Dad's face lit up when Buddy bounded through the door. There's our boy. We missed you, Buddy. How's Madison taking it? Mom asked, settling onto the couch while Buddy claimed his favorite sunny spot on the carpet. Linda's expression tightened. She's not handling the situation well. She's been locked in her room since last night, and this morning she was on the phone with someone, arguing about money. My ears perked up. Madison arguing about money was interesting, especially since she supposedly had her college expenses covered by an academic scholarship and Dad's generous allowance. She keeps saying we don't understand the pressure she's under, Dad added, running a hand through his hair. But I can't wrap my head around how pressure justifies fraud and animal abandonment. That's when Linda dropped the bombshell. There's something else. I was putting away laundry this morning and noticed some things in her room. She paused, clearly uncomfortable. Credit cards I didn't recognize, shopping bags with expensive items still tagged, and what looked like a stack of cash. My mom and I exchanged glances. Credit cards you didn't recognize? Mom pressed. They had her name on them, but we never helped her apply for credit cards. She's supposed to be on our account for emergencies only. A terrible suspicion started forming in my mind. Madison had always been materialistic, constantly showing off new clothes and gadgets that seemed expensive for someone on a college budget. And last month, I'd noticed Dad looking stressed about bills, mentioning something to Linda about their credit card statement being higher than expected. Dad, I said carefully, you might want to check your credit report. And maybe look at your account statements. His face went pale. You think she's been? I think Madison's been lying about a lot more than just Buddy, I said. That afternoon, while Madison remained barricaded in her room, Dad spent 3 hours on the phone with banks and credit card companies. Each conversation made his expression darker. By evening, he looked like a man who discovered his whole world was built on lies. $1,800, he said quietly, staring at a stack of printed statements. Charged to our emergency card over the past 6 months. Restaurants, shopping, cash advances. The expensive electronics in her room makes sense now, Linda added, her voice hollow. I felt a sick satisfaction knowing Madison's house of cards was collapsing, but seeing Dad's heartbreak tempered my vindictive pleasure. He genuinely cared about her, treated her like his own daughter. She'd repaid that trust by stealing from him and trying to destroy the thing I loved most. But as I watched him process this betrayal, I realized I'd uncovered something bigger than credit card fraud. And I was just getting started. That evening, I was in my room with Buddy when I heard shouting from downstairs. Madison had finally emerged from her cave, and from the sound of it, Dad was confronting her about the credit card theft. Supposed to be for emergencies only. Dad's voice carried up the stairs. It was an emergency. Madison shot back. Do you have any idea what it costs to maintain the social connections I need for my career? The networking events, the right clothes, You stole from us, Madison. There's no justification for that. I crept to the top of the stairs, Buddy padding silently beside me. Through the banister, I could see Madison pacing the living room like a caged animal while Dad and Linda sat rigidly on the couch. I was going to pay it back, she insisted. My scholarship covers tuition, but there are other expenses. What scholarship? Linda interrupted sharply. The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Madison froze mid-pace, her hand flying to that telltale spot on her collarbone. My academic scholarship. You know, the one that. Madison. Dad's voice was deadly quiet. What scholarship? I watched my stepsister's face cycle through several expressions before settling on cornered desperation. The merit scholarship from the university. I told you about it junior year. You told us you applied for scholarships, Linda said slowly. You never said you got one. Something cold settled in my stomach as I started connecting dots. Madison's expensive lifestyle, the mysterious credit cards, the way she always seemed to have money for things that college students couldn't typically afford. And now this reaction to a simple question about her scholarship. Of course I got one, Madison said, but her voice had that too bright quality again. Why do you think my college costs have been so reasonable? Dad pulled out his phone. What's the name of it? I want to call the financial aid office to understand how this all works. You can't just call them. There are privacy laws. Madison, I'm your stepfather and I've been helping pay for your education. They'll absolutely discuss your financial aid status with me. The panic on her face was unmistakable now. Look, maybe the scholarship thing is more complicated than I explained. There were some administrative issues this semester. What kind of administrative issues? Linda's voice was getting sharper. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Something big was about to break, and I wanted every second of it documented. Fine. Madison exploded. You want the truth? I didn't get the scholarship I applied for, okay? But I was embarrassed to tell you because you both made such a big deal about me being the smart one and how proud you were that I was getting academic recognition. The living room went dead silent. So you've been lying about having financial aid for? Dad's voice trailed off as he did the math. 2 years. I was handling it. I got a job, I've been managing my expenses. By stealing from us, Linda finished flatly. It's not stealing when it's family money. Madison's composure was completely gone now. You spend more on Alex's therapy and special accommodations than you ever have on my education. My blood went cold. The special accommodations she was referring to were the sessions with my school counselor after my mom's divorce and the subsequent family upheaval, sessions that had helped me cope with living in a blended family that didn't always feel like home. Those are medical expenses, Dad said, his voice dangerous. Are you seriously comparing your daughter's mental health needs to your shopping sprees? I'm not even your real daughter. Madison screamed. But you'll move heaven and earth for Alex, who doesn't even live here full-time, while I'm drowning in debt trying to build a future. The mask was completely off now. All the sweetness, all the performed concern, gone. This was who Madison really was underneath, bitter, jealous, and willing to destroy anything that threatened her position as the golden child. Get out, Dad said quietly. What? Get out of my house. Now. But I barely heard the rest of their argument, because my phone was buzzing with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Alex? I think we need to talk about Madison Morrison. Tyler. Madison's boyfriend of 8 months, the one she was always posting about on social media. This was about to get very interesting. I stepped outside to call Tyler back, my heart racing as I wondered what Madison's boyfriend could possibly want to discuss. Buddy followed me onto the back porch, sensing my tension. Alex? Thank God you called back. Tyler's voice was strained, exhausted. Look, this is going to sound crazy, but I think Madison's been lying to me about, well, everything. What do you mean? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly what he meant. She told me you guys were roommates at your dad's place, that you were jealous of our relationship and kept trying to cause problems between us. Said you made up stories about her to get attention. Tyler paused. But then today she called me crying about how her family was ganging up on her over some missing dog, and the story didn't match anything she told me before. I closed my eyes, feeling that familiar rage building. Even in crisis, Madison was spinning lies to make herself the victim and paint me as the villain. Tyler, we're not roommates. She's my stepsister, and she stole my dog and abandoned him at a shelter while lying to our parents about it. I kept my voice level, factual. What else has she told you about her life? That's just it, I'm starting to think most of it was bullshit. He sounded frustrated, hurt. She said she was on full academic scholarship, but yesterday I overheard her on the phone with someone about overdue tuition payments. When I asked about it, she gave me some story about scholarship disbursement delays. My pulse quickened. What else? The money thing has been bothering me for weeks. She's always buying expensive stuff, going to fancy restaurants, getting her nails done at that high-end salon downtown. But when I suggested we split the cost of our spring break trip, she said she was broke and asked if I could cover her portion. I thought about the credit card statements Dad had been staring at, all those charges Madison had racked up while playing the struggling college student. Tyler, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Has Madison ever asked you to pay for things? Like, directly ask for money? A long pause. Yeah, actually. She borrowed $300 last month for emergency car repairs that she was supposed to pay back by now. And before that, it was $200 for textbooks that she said financial aid didn't cover in time. $500. Combined with the $1,800 she'd stolen from Dad's credit cards, Madison had been running quite the con operation. Has she paid any of it back? That's what I called to ask you about, actually. She texted me this morning saying her family was having financial problems and she couldn't repay me right now. But if your dad has money troubles, why is she always talking about expensive family vacations and shopping trips with her stepmom? Because Madison was a pathological liar who crafted different stories for different audiences, I realized. To Tyler, we were the wealthy family she could borrow money from. To us, she was the struggling student who needed emergency credit card access. To her college friends, she was probably something else entirely. Tyler, I think you should know that Madison has been lying about a lot more than just our family situation. I took a deep breath. And if you really want to know who she is, you might want to look into some other things. Like what? Through the window, I could see Madison storming around the living room, gesticulating wildly while Dad and Linda watched with expressions of growing disgust. Her whole world was crumbling, but she was still trying to manipulate the narrative. Like whether she's actually passing her classes, I said quietly. Because someone who's supposedly on academic scholarship shouldn't need to lie about everything else. The silence on the other end of the line told me Tyler was putting pieces together, just like I had. Alex, he said finally, I think I need to make some phone calls. Yeah, I agreed, watching Madison's performance through the window. I think you do. After Tyler hung up, I sat on the back porch for a few minutes, processing everything. Madison hadn't just destroyed my life with Buddy, she'd been running elaborate cons on everyone who cared about her. The scope of her deception was staggering. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a Facebook message from someone named Jessica Chen, with a profile picture showing a girl about Madison's age in what looked like a college dorm room. Hi Alex. I hope this isn't weird, but I'm Madison's roommate at State. Tyler gave me your number. He's dating my friend Rachel now that Madison's been lying about having a boyfriend this whole semester. Can we talk? I stared at the message, reading it 3 times before the words sank in. Madison's roommate. Tyler dating someone named Rachel. Madison lying about having a boyfriend. Which meant Madison had been lying to Tyler about dating him exclusively, while simultaneously lying to her college friends about dating him at all. I called Jessica immediately. Oh my god, thank you for calling back, Jessica said, her voice rushing with nervous energy. I've been trying to figure out how to handle this situation for weeks. Madison's been, well, she's been telling people at school some really concerning stories about her family. What kind of stories? She told everyone that her stepfather is emotionally abusive and controls all her money, which is why she needs to borrow cash from friends constantly. She said her stepsister, that's you, right? Has serious mental health issues and has been sabotaging her relationships out of jealousy. My stomach dropped. Madison hadn't just been stealing money and lying about scholarships. She'd been systematically destroying my reputation among people I'd never even met, creating a narrative where she was the victim of an unstable home environment. Jessica, none of that is true. Madison's been stealing from my dad and lying about having financial aid. She literally stole my dog and abandoned him at a shelter. That explains so much, Jessica said grimly. Because here's the thing, she's been telling professors that her family situation is affecting her academic performance. She's gotten extensions on 3 major assignments this semester by claiming she's dealing with an abusive home environment and a mentally ill sibling who's been threatening her. The rage that hit me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Madison wasn't just lying about money or scholarships. She was using fabricated stories about abuse and mental illness to manipulate her professors, all while painting me as some kind of dangerous, unstable person. There's more, Jessica continued. She's been borrowing money from at least 6 different people in our dorm, always with sob stories about family emergencies or medical bills. And last week, I caught her going through my desk when she thought I wasn't around. What was she looking for? I keep my textbooks, receipts, and financial aid documents in there. I think she was trying to figure out how much money I have access to. Jessica paused. Alex, I think your stepsister might have a serious problem. Like, beyond just normal lying. This is comprehensive. Through the window, I could see Madison on her phone now, pacing frantically while talking to someone. Her free hand was gesturing wildly, and even from outside I could tell she was in crisis management mode. Jessica, I need to ask you a huge favor. Do you think you could document some of this? Like, get statements from the people she's borrowed money from, maybe screenshots of the stories she's been telling? Way ahead of you. When Tyler contacted me and Rachel yesterday, we started comparing notes with other people in the dorm. Madison's been running the same con on half our floor. As Jessica spoke, I watched Dad emerge from the house, his face grim. He headed straight for his car, phone pressed to his ear. Something big was happening. Jessica, I think Madison's house of cards is about to collapse completely. And when it does, you're going to want to be ready. I hung up with Jessica and went back inside, finding the house in chaos. Madison was now standing in the hallway with 2 suitcases, her face red and blotchy from crying. Linda was hovering nearby looking devastated, while Dad spoke in clipped tones on his phone by the front door. Need to verify enrollment status for Madison Morrison, student ID number. He caught sight of me and held up one finger, continuing his conversation with what I assumed was someone from the university. Madison spotted me and her expression twisted into something ugly. This is all your fault, she hissed. If you hadn't made such a big deal about that stupid dog. I made a big deal about my dog that you illegally surrendered using my identity, I cut her off. Everything else is just the truth finally coming out. You have no idea what you've done, she said, dragging her suitcases toward the door. I had everything under control. Control. I almost laughed. You were stealing from Dad, lying to your boyfriend, scamming your roommates, and using fake abuse stories to manipulate your professors. That's not control, that's a con game. Her face went white. How do you know about? Tyler called me. So did Jessica. Turns out when you lie to everyone in your life, eventually they start comparing notes. Dad finished his phone call and turned to face us, his expression grim. Madison, we need to talk. Now. I'm leaving, she said, lifting her chin defiantly. I'll stay with friends until I figure something else out. You're not enrolled, Dad said quietly. The words hit the hallway like a physical blow. Even I felt the impact of them, and I wasn't the one whose entire fabricated life had just been exposed in 5 words. Madison's face cycled through confusion, denial, and finally panic. What do you mean? I just spoke with the registrar's office. You were dropped from all your classes 3 weeks ago for non-payment. Your tuition has been overdue since the beginning of the semester. Dad's voice was eerily calm, like he was reading a weather report instead of destroying his stepdaughter's lies. They've been trying to reach you, but apparently the phone number on file is disconnected. That's impossible, Madison whispered, but the fight was draining out of her voice. There must be some mistake. The only mistake was trusting you, Linda said from behind her, and the pain in her mother's voice was evident. All these months, we thought you were succeeding in college. We were so proud. I watched Madison's last desperate calculation play out across her face. She was weighing her options, trying to figure out if there was any way to spin this, any angle that might let her maintain some shred of her constructed reality. I can fix this, she said finally. I just need a little time to sort out the financial aid issues, maybe take a semester off to work. With what money? Dad asked. You've stolen from us, borrowed from your boyfriend, scammed your dorm mates. Who's going to trust you with anything now? My phone buzzed with another message from Tyler. Rachel and I went to Madison's dorm. Jessica says she cleared out her stuff and left campus this morning. Did she tell you she hasn't been to classes in weeks? I showed Dad the text. His jaw tightened as he read it. So not only are you not enrolled, he said slowly, but you've been pretending to go to classes that you weren't even signed up for. What exactly have you been doing with your time, Madison? She grabbed the handle of her suitcase, her composure finally cracking completely. I don't have to explain myself to any of you. This family never supported me anyway. But as she wheeled her bags toward the door, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID made my blood run cold. Madison, I called out, holding up my phone so she could see the screen. It's the county sheriff's office. I think they want to talk to you about identity theft. The suitcase fell from her hands with a loud thud. The sheriff's deputy who arrived 20 minutes later was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who looked like she'd seen every kind of family drama imaginable. She introduced herself as Deputy Martinez and asked to speak with Madison privately first. I watched through the living room window as they sat in the patrol car, Madison's animated gestures becoming increasingly frantic as the conversation progressed. Whatever she was telling the deputy clearly wasn't landing the way she hoped, because Martinez's expression remained skeptical throughout. Think they'll actually arrest her? I asked Dad, who was standing beside me with his arms crossed. Identity theft is a felony, he said grimly. Using your name to surrender, buddy, forging those documents, it's not just a family disagreement anymore. When Martinez finally escorted Madison back to the house, my stepsister's face was ashen. The deputy settled at our kitchen table with a notepad while Madison perched on the edge of a chair like she was ready to bolt. Miss Morrison has admitted to surrendering the dog using false identification, Martinez said, looking between Dad and me. She claims it was a family misunderstanding and that she believed she had permission to act on your behalf. I pulled out my phone and showed Martinez the video I'd recorded of Madison lying about calling shelters. She's been lying about this from the beginning. And this was just the start of what we discovered. As I laid out the credit card theft, the fake scholarship claims, and the money she'd borrowed from Tyler, Martinez's eyebrows climbed higher. Madison sat in mortified silence, occasionally opening her mouth to object before apparently thinking better of it. So we have identity theft, credit card fraud, and what sounds like wire fraud if she used electronic communications to obtain money under false pretenses, Martinez summarized. Miss Morrison, this is significantly more serious than a family dispute over a pet. I can pay everything back, Madison said desperately. This is all just a misunderstanding that got out of hand. I never meant for. With what money? Dad interrupted. You're not even enrolled in school. You have no job that we know of. How exactly were you planning to repay the nearly $3,000 you've stolen and borrowed? Martinez looked up sharply. $3,000. I did the quick math in my head, $1,800 from Dad's credit cards, $500 from Tyler, plus whatever Jessica had mentioned about the dorm floor loans. Probably more. We're still finding out about different people she's taken money from. I have a job, Madison said quickly. I've been working at a boutique downtown. The manager said I could pick up extra shifts. Dad's phone rang, and he glanced at the caller ID with a frown. It's Linda. She's supposed to be at work. He answered, listened for a moment, then his face went white. What do you mean the account is overdrawn? My stomach dropped as Dad put the call on speaker. Tried to use the debit card for groceries and it was declined. Linda's voice came through, stressed and confused. I called the bank and they said there was a large cash withdrawal this morning that put us in the negative. David, I didn't take any money out. All eyes turned to Madison, whose face had gone from pale to green. Martinez set down her pen and leaned forward. Miss Morrison, did you make any transactions on your parents' accounts today? The silence stretched out like a taut wire about to snap. Madison's hand moved unconsciously to her collarbone, and I saw her weighing her options one last time. I needed cash for a security deposit, she whispered finally. For an apartment. I was going to pay it back as soon as. How much? Dad's voice was deadly quiet. $1,200. Deputy Martinez stood up and reached for her handcuffs. Madison Morrison, you're under arrest for identity theft and grand theft. You have the right to remain silent. As the deputy read Madison her rights, my stepsister finally looked directly at me for the first time all day. The hatred in her eyes was absolute. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings and family therapy sessions. Madison was released on bail that Dad refused to pay. Linda's sister eventually put up the money, and she moved in with some friend none of us had ever heard of. The house felt different without her constant manipulation, but the damage she'd left behind was extensive. Dad had to take out a loan to cover the money she'd stolen, and Linda barely spoke for days after discovering the full scope of her daughter's lies. The family therapy sessions Dr. Chen recommended were awkward and painful, full of long silences and Linda's quiet crying. But the Real bomb dropped 3 weeks after Madison's arrest, when Tyler called me with news that made my blood run cold. Alex, you need to know something, he said, his voice tight with worry. I've been going through old texts and social media posts, trying to piece together how long Madison was lying to me. And I found something really disturbing. What kind of disturbing? She's been posting about your family on her private Instagram account. Like, detailed posts about your daily routines, when you're home alone, when your parents are traveling. She even posted photos of your house, your room, Buddy sleeping in the backyard. Tyler paused. Alex, some of these posts have comments from people I don't recognize. People asking about when the house is empty, whether you have security systems. I settled in my stomach. Send me screenshots. Now. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with images that made me feel physically sick. Madison had been documenting our family's life like we were subjects in some twisted social experiment. Photos of Dad's car not in the driveway with captions like, "Stepdaddy's working late again." Pictures of my bedroom window with timestamps showing when my light turned off at night. But the comments were what made me call Dad immediately. She's been telling people where we live, I said without preamble when he answered. Strangers on social media. Tyler found her private Instagram account and there are people asking about our schedules, our security, when the house is empty. I heard papers shuffling in the background. Dad was at work, but I could tell I had his full attention now. How long has this been going on? Tyler says some of the posts go back 6 months. Dad, there are photos of the inside of our house, my bedroom, even pictures she took of your home office when you weren't around. My voice was shaking now. What if this isn't just about money and Buddy? What if she's been planning something bigger? Dad was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. I'm coming home, he said finally. Don't go anywhere alone until I get there. But when Dad arrived an hour later, he wasn't alone. Deputy Martinez was with him, along with a detective I didn't recognize. They set up at our kitchen table with laptops and file folders, and the grim expressions on their faces told me this was about to get much worse than identity theft and credit card fraud. Alex, Detective Walsh said after Dad explained why they were there, we need you to walk us through every interaction you've had with Madison since you discovered Buddy was missing. Every conversation, every text message, everything you can remember. Why? What's going on? Martinez and Walsh exchanged glances before Martinez spoke up. Madison's been arrested again. This time for conspiracy to commit burglary. It seems she's been providing information about your family's routines to some very dangerous people. The room started spinning around me as the implications hit. Madison hadn't just been running petty scams for college money. She'd been setting us up to be robbed. The detective's words hit me like a physical blow. Conspiracy to commit burglary kept echoing in my head as I tried to process what that meant for our family. The people she was communicating with online, Detective Walsh continued, opening a folder thick with printed screenshots, they're part of a crew that targets suburban homes. Madison was providing them with detailed intelligence about your family's routines, security measures, and valuable items in the house. Dad's face had gone completely white. How long has this been going on? Based on the digital evidence, at least 4 months. She was receiving payments through a cash app for the information. Walsh spread out several printouts showing Madison's social media posts. Look at these captions. Family dinner every Sunday at 6 foot with photos of mom's jewelry visible on the counter. Stepdad's golf tournaments with dates and times when the house would be empty. I stared at a photo Madison had taken of our living room, showing Dad's expensive sound system and Linda's laptop sitting on the coffee table. The caption read, Family movie night setup clapperboard, but now I could see it for what it really was, a catalog of everything worth stealing. The plan was to hit your house this weekend, Martinez said. Your parents are supposed to be at that wedding in Portland, right? Madison told them exactly when you'd be alone and for how long. My stomach lurched. The wedding was Linda's cousin's ceremony, and I begged off going because I wanted to stay home with Buddy. Madison knew I'd be by myself for 2 full days, in a house she'd mapped out completely for criminals. She was going to let them rob us while I was sleeping here alone, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It gets worse, Walsh said grimly. The messages we recovered show Madison asking specifically about the dog situation and whether they'd need to deal with any animals during the break-in. When they told her dogs were just a minor inconvenience. He didn't need to finish. I understood perfectly. Madison had gotten rid of Buddy not just out of spite, but because she was planning to have our house robbed and didn't want my protective dog interfering with her criminal partners. Dad suddenly stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Where is she now? County lockup. No bail this time. Martinez closed her notebook. But we need to discuss security measures for your family. The crew she was working with is still out there, and they might decide to move forward with or without her intel. What kind of security measures? Linda's voice came from the doorway. She'd been standing there listening, her face pale as paper. New locks, definitely. Security system installation. We'd also recommend staying elsewhere for a few days while we monitor the situation and make arrests. I looked around our living room, the same space Madison had photographed and cataloged like merchandise for sale. Every family photo, every piece of furniture, every detail of our daily life had been turned into a weapon against us. There's something else, I said slowly, a horrible realization dawning. Madison knew I'd be alone this weekend, but she also knew exactly where I'd be sleeping, what my routines are, when I walk Buddy at night. I met Detective Walsh's eyes. What if the plan wasn't just robbery? The silence that followed was deafening. We're investigating all possibilities, Walsh said carefully. But right now, the most important thing is keeping your family safe while we round up the rest of this crew. As the detectives packed up their files, I couldn't shake the feeling that we still didn't know the full scope of Madison's betrayal. The woman I'd lived with for 3 years had been methodically documenting our lives, not just for money, but potentially for something much darker. And somewhere out there, dangerous people had detailed maps of our home and our habits. People who might not care that their inside source was now sitting in a jail cell. That night, despite the new locks Dad had installed and the security system technician scheduled for the next morning, none of us slept well. I kept Buddy in my room and found myself checking the window every hour, looking for any sign of movement in the yard. Every small sound made my heart race. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Alex? The voice was female, young, and terrified. This is Sarah Martinez. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm Madison's friend from community college. I think I'm in serious trouble. I sat up in bed, fully awake now. What kind of trouble? Madison gave some guys my address and work schedule. She told them I keep cash in my apartment for my waitressing tips. Sarah's voice was shaking. They came by tonight asking questions about when I'm usually home. My neighbor scared them off, but they said they'd be back. The blood drained from my face. Sarah, you need to call the police right now. I did. That's how I got your number. The detective said Madison had been targeting multiple people, not just your family. But they can't do anything until these guys actually commit a crime. She was crying now. I can't afford to move, and I can't miss work, but I'm terrified they're going to break in. I thought about Detective Walsh's files, all those printed messages and photos. How many other people had Madison been feeding information about? How many other potential victims were sitting in their homes right now, waiting for criminals to show up? How many people do you think Madison was giving information about? I asked. I don't know, but she was always asking weird questions about my roommate's schedule, when my boyfriend stays over, what kind of electronics we have. I thought she was just being friendly. Sarah's voice cracked. She even borrowed my spare key once, said she needed to pick up something when I wasn't home. What if she made copies? My blood went cold. Madison had been in our house for 3 years. She'd had access to every key, every code, every security detail. Even with new locks, she could have shared information about our layout, our hiding spots, our routines that went far beyond what she posted online. I thought about Dad's home office, where he kept important documents. Linda's jewelry box that she thought was hidden in her closet. The spare house key we kept under the garden gnome that Madison definitely knew about. Sarah, I'm going to give you Detective Walsh's direct number. Tell him everything Madison asked you about, every time she was in your apartment, every detail you can remember. I was already texting Dad to wake him up. And don't stay there tonight. Go to a hotel or a friend's place. After Sarah hung up, I crept downstairs to find Dad already in the kitchen, his phone pressed to his ear. The look on his face told me he was getting similar calls. That was Detective Walsh, he said when he finished. 3 more potential victims have called tonight. Madison wasn't just targeting us, she was running a whole network, feeding information about different people to different criminals. Dad, what if they already have copies of our keys? What if the new locks aren't enough? He ran a hand through his hair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. We're going to stay at your mom's place for the rest of the week. Pack whatever you need for school. What about Buddy? What if they come here looking for him again? Dad's expression hardened. Buddy comes with us. And if anyone tries to hurt that dog or this family again, they're going to have bigger problems than the police. But as I headed upstairs to pack, I couldn't shake the feeling that Madison's network was bigger than any of us realized. And somewhere out there, dangerous people were probably very angry that their inside source had just disappeared into the criminal justice system. People who might blame our family for ruining their carefully planned crimes. The call came at 6 a.m. the next morning while we were loading suitcases into Dad's car. Detective Walsh's voice was tense, professional, but I could hear the underlying urgency. We need you to come to the station, he said without preamble. Madison's asking to speak with Alex specifically. Says she has information about imminent threats, but she'll only talk to her stepsister. Dad's grip tightened on his coffee mug. Absolutely not. My daughter isn't going anywhere near. She claims there's something planned for today that we don't know about, Walsh interrupted. Something involving Alex directly. I settled in my stomach as I processed his words. Madison knew something specific about a threat against me, and she was using that information as leverage to get what she wanted, a face-to-face conversation. It could be manipulation, Linda said from the doorway, her voice hollow. Madison's always been able to twist situations to her advantage. But even as she spoke, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, alerts flooding my screen from accounts I didn't recognize. I opened Instagram first and immediately felt sick. Someone had created a fake account using photos scraped from my social media, but the content was horrifying. Dozens of posts showing pictures of me walking Buddy, getting in my car, coming home from school, all timestamped from the past week. The captions made my hands shake. Pretty girl lives alone most afternoons, 2 hearts, and walks her dog same route every day at 4 p.m. dog. Dad, I whispered, showing him my phone screen. Someone's been following me. Detective Walsh's voice came through the speaker, sharp with concern. What's happening? Fake social media accounts, Dad reported, scrolling through the posts. Someone's been stalking Alex and posting her movements online. We're coming to get you now. Don't go anywhere, don't post anything on social media, and keep your location services turned off. But as Dad hung up, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. In one of the photos on the fake account, I could see our house number clearly visible in the background, but the angle was wrong for a street shot. This was taken from inside our yard, I said, zooming in on the image. Whoever took this was standing by our back fence. Linda peered over my shoulder and gasped. That's the view from Madison's bedroom window. The realization hit us all simultaneously. These weren't photos taken by random stalkers. Someone had been in our house, in Madison's room, taking surveillance photos of me without anyone knowing. My phone rang again, another unknown number. Don't answer it, Dad said quickly, but I was already staring at the caller ID. It's Tyler, I said, recognizing the area code. Madison's ex. I accepted the call, putting it on speaker. Alex, thank God, Tyler's voice was panicked, breathless. I've been calling everyone. Someone broke into my apartment last night. Are you okay? They didn't take anything valuable, just my laptop and some photos I had of Madison. But here's the thing, they left a note. His voice dropped to a whisper. It had your name on it, Alex. And your school schedule. The world seemed to tilt sideways as the scope of this threat became clear. This wasn't just about robbery anymore. Someone was specifically targeting me, using Madison's network to gather information, and they were angry enough about her arrest to escalate from theft to something much more personal. Detective Walsh's car couldn't get here fast enough. And somewhere out there, Madison was sitting in a jail cell, holding the key to stopping whatever was about to happen. The police station felt like something out of a crime drama as Detective Walsh led us through secure doors and past holding cells. My hands were shaking as we approached the interview room where Madison was waiting, flanked by a public defender who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Madison had changed dramatically in just a few weeks. Gone was the perfectly styled hair and designer clothes, replaced by an orange jumpsuit and dark circles under her eyes. But when she looked up at me, that familiar calculating expression was still there. Hello, Alex, she said with false sweetness. Thank you for coming. Cut the act, Madison, Detective Walsh said sharply. You said you had information about threats against your stepsister. Start talking. Madison leaned back in her chair, still trying to maintain control even in handcuffs. The people I was working with, they're not just thieves. When I got arrested, they lost a lot of potential targets. They blame your family for ruining their operation. What exactly are they planning? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. There's a guy named Derek who's been coordinating everything. He's furious that the house robbery fell through, and he's decided to make it personal. Madison's mask slipped slightly, showing genuine fear. He knows where you go to school, Alex. He knows your routine better than your own parents do. Dad leaned forward. Because you gave him that information. I never thought they'd target Alex directly. Madison's composure cracked completely. It was supposed to be simple burglaries when nobody was home. But Derek's escalated things since my arrest. Detective Walsh set a photo on the table. Is this Derek? Madison nodded, and I felt sick looking at the mugshot of a man with dead eyes and gang tattoos covering his neck. He's planning to grab Alex after school today, Madison whispered. He wants to use her as leverage to get me to pay back the money he says I owe him for the failed jobs. The room went dead silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Everything clicked into place, the surveillance photos, the fake social media accounts, Tyler's burglary. This wasn't random criminal activity. This was a targeted kidnapping plot. Where? Walsh demanded. The parking lot behind the gym. He knows Alex stays late on Thursdays for student newspaper meetings. Madison finally met my eyes. I'm telling you this because I never wanted you to get physically hurt. I was angry and stupid, but I'm not a monster. Detective Walsh was already on his radio, calling for units to surround my school. But I found myself staring at Madison, this person who'd shared a house with me for 3 years, trying to understand how we'd gotten to this point. Why? I asked quietly. Why destroy everything for money you could have just asked for? For the first time since I'd known her, Madison looked genuinely ashamed. Because asking meant admitting I wasn't perfect. And in this family, you were already the one who needed help, who got understanding and support. I was supposed to be the successful one, the one who had it all figured out. Her voice broke. I couldn't stand the thought of being seen as a failure too. The tragedy of it hit me then. Madison had destroyed her life and endangered mine because she couldn't bear to be vulnerable, to admit she was struggling and needed help like any normal person. 2 hours later, Derek and 3 associates were in custody, arrested in a school parking lot with zip ties, a van, and detailed plans for my abduction. The nightmare that had started with Buddy's disappearance was finally over. As we drove home that evening, to our real home, with new security but also new understanding, I looked out at Buddy running in the backyard and realized something important. Madison's desperate need to appear perfect had nearly destroyed 2 families. But our willingness to face ugly truths and support each other had saved us all. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's darkness destroy your light.